got lived experience of being in ABEN in particular. Some of the things has been saying with Neil, very much relate to temporary accommodation in general, really, and kind of shared issues, particularly around shared accommodation and dormitory night shelter type accommodation, which there's some kind of real challenges with, really. We wanted to respond to. So I'm going to kick off really with I'm going to kick off and do a bit about like what the providers have said, and then I'm going to hand over to people that have been involved in the co-production work to do a bit of feedback around that. I think so first of all, the first question that we asked the providers was about what type of models that they used, whether it was shared. What are the options? I've just got it at the screen in front of me. So whether it was dispersed single occupancy, dispersed multiple occupancy, hostel with 24-hour support, or hostel with floating support. So we've got 4 boroughs offering only dispersed single occupancy, 4 boroughs offering dispersed multiple occupancy, 3 with hostel on site, and 3 with hostel with floating support. So some of these are mixed models, and 9 of the 10 boroughs have responded to this survey with what not doing. So and this is kind of backed up with the evaluation, that it's not really kind of got, well, it's definitely not got one identity, ABEN. So like people do talk about it like it's one service, but there's extremely different levels of accommodation and support provided. So it in some ways it doesn't feel congruent to refer to it as kind of as one service, kind of like it, just calling it ABEN in specifically. So then there was a question about whether COVID had changed people's models. With 3 of 10 boroughs said that they'd moved away from shared dormitory style accommodation directly because of the pandemic, and there was another one saying that it kind of maybe it changed what they were, how they would have responded. Maybe they'd have had kind of maybe wouldn't have took such a drastic move towards single, fully single room, I think they describe it as in the evaluation as. So, and there was a fair bit of variation between what the personal housing plans kind of, I suppose how areas were able to respond to that, with some areas having dedicated move on support and dedicated, consistent people that provided that support to everyone, with other areas not having that resource, and the expectation more being on people to start going through the process of bidding for council house, which at times feels overwhelming for people and a confusing process. And some boroughs have got like, some boroughs in their responses have shown they've really got a multi-agency like team that are working on those move on plans. So it's not just one person's responsibility. It's kind of all the agencies in an area. And others haven't included that in, kind of in the response. So I think there were some things in the breakout rooms we wanted to kind of explore a bit further there about how we get a bit more of a consistent approach there in that multi-agency response. In terms of barriers to move on, unsurprisingly, kind of everyone's listed lack of suitable accommodation as a barrier. There's no surprises there. We're kind of expecting that one. Other significant ones are working with people with no recourse to public funds, ineligible for housing benefit, with 6 boroughs saying that that was a big barrier for them. Additionally, like significant ones were lack of wraparound support, and move on options being really restrictive in terms of people that still have high support needs and still have that combination people were saying was of both substance abuse and mental health needs, and it'd be really difficult to find move on options for people that have still got those as ongoing support needs. So that's kind of the edited highlights of the provider feedback. David's gonna facilitate a discussion to go into that in a bit more detail. So I'm going to hand over now to the people that have been involved in the co-production work. Judith, I think, are you starting this bit?
On the agenda it says Selva, but if you want me to start, I will.
Is Selva in?
Yeah, Selva's there.
Do you want to start then, Selva?
Yeah, I don't mind. I could do with someone allowing me to be co-host, please. And then I'd like to share screen if possible.
Yeah, sure. I'll do that now. There you are.
And hope that it works.
Yeah, the floor is yours, Silva.
Thank you. Right. So this is a little visual that I have produced for today. So just a little review on, in fact, I should introduce myself first, shouldn't I? So I'm Selva, I'm one of the Elephants Trail. So I'm a person with lived experience, which for myself is chronic depression and anxiety. So I got involved with the Elephants Trail, and we not going to try to teach anyone how to suck eggs. We all know that we all know what ABEN is, but I've just a little overview. So, you know, it's a GM-wide initiative supported by the Greater Manchester Combined Authority and the MHCLG, which is basically the Ministry of Housing. It started in 2019 and we're now on phase 3. And our lead is Ahmed, and it's delivered by the Stepping Stones. And ABEN is part of the Bury Homelessness Partnership, and at the moment the homelessness action plan is sort of being overhauled and it's due to be implemented any time as far as I know. And they came to the Elephants Trail and asked for some help regards making it more person-centred. So from this came the Bury co-production group, which has been together for about 6 months now, a mental health and homelessness working group, using people like myself with lived experience. And we've been going to different places, one being Manor House, to collect data on what homeless and rough sleepers feel about how it is to access mental health support and all the other support that they require. And this is part of the ABEN consultations. So what is co-production? Which is the bit I'm interested in. So, you know, the delivery of public services in an equal and reciprocal relationship between professionals, those using the services, families and neighbours. And it sort of starts with the idea that no one is more important than the other person. Everyone is equal and we all have assets to bring to the table. And this includes everybody, so the community, service users, workers, practitioners, managers, and all other professionals. And if there is a them and us culture, and that could be anyone, then co-production, it's not going to work. So to build those relationships and ultimately trust, there are sort of 4 main principles which need to be applied. 1, equality, sort of speaks for itself, doesn't it? Diversity, which, like equality, we need so that we can get a good representation of our community's needs. Accessibility, so it must be a process which is accessible to everybody. So, for example, relevant information shared in a timely manner and in sort of a universal language. So, you know, no jargon, no acronyms that we don't know what they are. And the last one, and I can't say this word, reciprocity, and I can't say it, is important, and it's to do with all involved, that they should get something for what they've put in, and that doesn't actually necessarily have to be financial. So we'll move on, and an important part of co-production is for organisations and citizens to come up with an agreement as to what they understand co-production to be and the principles that will guide that implementation. And a little sort of addition under, you know, without these principles, it becomes a danger that the process will be undermined into a public service agenda aimed at reducing expenditure, pursuing targets, or proving its impact. And I have a little quote from a Jane McGrath, the chief exec of West London Collaborative CIC, bit of a mouthful. And when she was working alongside the King's Fund, she noticed that when setting out these principles on any project that she worked on, they were never then referred to again. And she says, there appears to be a collective, silent refusal to acknowledge the core values of co-production. And then she puts, it's most odd. So to be called co-production, it has to be genuinely equal. Let's see where I'm up to. Yeah, so this includes all parts of the project, so conception, design, steering, management, policies, and even budgets. And with all that in mind, I got this from the NHS, the Integrated Personal Commissioning, which says, so what needs to be in place? 1, develop a co-production strategy, which demonstrates the values and commitments to the project, and these will be mutually agreed upon. 2, a statement of purpose, which makes it clear what the group wants to achieve. 3, ensure that everyone has the knowledge, skills and confidence to take part in what should be transformational change. And how will these people be supported is a question. 4, develop a strong co-production peer network, which is not the same as a peer support group. When people are clear about their roles and what they are being asked to do. And when you do that, you have trust. Reciprocal relationships are all about give and take. And lastly, for it to be successful, there has to be an ongoing process, regular reviews and evaluations, just to make sure that everything is on track, to learn and adapt from any challenges or any successes even. So if all these are taken into account, you will have transparency and accountability, which of course is really important with co-production. There should be things like sanctions accordingly. So if things were to break down, there may be audits or inspections, and only then will you really see trust. And then I'm on the last bit now. Challenges, and there are always challenges, aren't there? Resource, of course, is always a big one, especially financial. But it doesn't need to just be financial. It can also be time, because co-production is really time consuming and it needs to be planned as a long-term project. Getting everyone board, that's also challenging. To get everyone to engage is difficult because there is a fear of perhaps that loss of power, maybe even losing their job, or some people are just cynical about trying a new method of working. People don't like change. Poor communication sort of speaks for itself. You need to have good communication at all levels or it will break down. And then on a commissioning level, you need to try to shift from measuring success from outputs, so sort of how many people you've managed to get through the system, to an outcomes based. And that's more challenging because it's qualitative rather than quantitative. And lastly, If the core principles aren't adhered to, the whole process then has that feeling of tokenism, doesn't it? So what I want to ask is, what are Bury Council and everyone else, all the other organisations in Bury, do we really want to see co-production, or is it going to be another tick box exercise? And that's it.
Thank you, Selva. That's perfect, because that just goes straight into what I was going to carry on with. So it's like we've rehearsed this. So as I'm Judith, and I'm part of the Elephant Trail, and I am on the co-production panel as well. For people from the Elephant Trail, we have people that have gone through trauma, homelessness, addiction, and mental health, and the mental health system, and come out the other side fighting for justice, so people don't have to experience the things that we have. And that's what our drive is, and that's what our passion is. So working on the co-production panel has been an educating, fulfilling experience. Having the key professional people with lived experience and people working on the ground roots level come together to view what is going on in the sector for the homeless. Being able to review the strategy, not only with our personal views, but also being the voice for the people who these policies affect the most. And that's what's been a strong part of being part of the Manor House, which I've been going to 3 times a week now for the last 2 months, to get the voice heard from the people who it really matters with. Being part of creating the new homeless strategy feels like it's been an honour, but, and this is a strong but, we want to carry on the work that we've started and see it through, making sure all the actions that have been put into place are carried through, and if not, why not? And who is responsible for the actions if they're not being met? So many times we've been part, so these are the people with lived experience, have been part of something where people in the higher sector have picked the lived experience brains so they can use the knowledge for their own gain. Once used, usually with a promise that they will return with a follow-up of the work to show how they value everything that has been said, go off with the lived experience tick box and never seen again. And we are people that are strongly passionate about this, and we shouldn't just be wheeled in as people with lived experience to be that tick box, to say, yes, they have been part of the homeless strategy being brought forward, and we have used lived experience people to be part of that. We want to carry on with the work that we've started and see it through, and be there with the people that are using these services now, and making sure that what is being said that's going to be done is going to be done. And I could carry on about how great the Manor House is, but I know that I've got to carry on with Juliet, and I have done a piece on the Manor House, so if anybody wants to read that, I can always follow it through. Juliet?
I just want to check we're okay for time, because I know we only had 10 minutes for this slot. Is it okay, Matt? Yeah. Hi guys, yes, my name's Julia, and I'm part of the Elephants Trail with Matt, Selva, Judith, Paddy, Mel, not sure who else is on here. Yeah, I've also been going to the Manor House and speaking to people who access that service. Some of them are homeless, some of them are accessing ABEN, some of them are sofa surfing, street homeless, some of them are in temporary accommodation, some of them are just lonely and vulnerable, and you know, they've got permanent accommodation now but they've no support. So we've been going there and building relationships, and I think the fact that you're not actually a worker as such or employed by the council makes a massive difference. People open up to us because we open up to them. There's not that level of professionalism where we have to hold back and not say anything about ourselves. You know, we can share openly about our experiences with mental health, etc. And that sort of gives them the confidence and the permission to be able to share honestly and openly. And that's what's been happening. And I think that is a valuable part of co-production. I don't think you'd get the same information from people without that. Because if you're going at it from a worker perspective, they might be thinking, oh, well, I'll be putting my chances at risk of getting a home somewhere, or if I'm criticising the service I'm with, I might be at risk being evicted. So I think it's really important to have people with lived experience supporting people in a peer role where it isn't an absolute equal, you know, relationship. Just for one example, so I got chatting to a guy last week, and he's a heroin user. He is housed, but he's really struggling trying to get off the heroin and to try and find meaningful purpose in life. And he was going to fill one of the forms out, but we thought it'd be better for us to have an in-depth chat with him because he had an awful lot to say. Really, really articulate, talented individual, and I could see that in him, and I just knew it'd be really beneficial for us to speak to him. And through just having that connection, I'm in recovery myself, I was able to sort of say, and it turned out he lives literally about 200 yards away from me, and I said, oh, I'll be going for a walk at the weekend with my partner, if you want to come, you know, he's in recovery as well. So he came along, and then we introduced him to Incredible Edibles, which is a community initiative where they've got an allotment, and they're going to be growing vegetables and teaching people how to plant and all sorts of stuff. And I introduced him to them, so he's going to start going there and sort of just having that meaningful relationship where he can pick up the phone to someone who's available after 5 p.m. and isn't just out for targets and stuff. I think made a massive difference to him, and you know, we can go down to that allotment now and start getting things in place so that he can hopefully come off the drugs soon, like working in connection with drug and alcohol services. So I do think that there's an awful lot of value in co-production, and I think you'll find that people will open up a lot more because they'll feel that they're not just being taken. You're not just there to take from them, you're there to give back as well, because it's a mutually beneficial relationship. I'm aware of the time, so I'll just leave it there for now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Julia and Juliet. Back to you, Matt.
So, sorry, I think Claire and Ahmed were just gonna just have a minute each before I to say a couple of things about their experience as a professional, and then I'll do the headlines of the service user feedback, if we're still using the word service user, really quickly, and we'll explore that in more detail in the breakout rooms. So
Brilliant.
Claire, do you want to come in?
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Hi everyone, I'm Claire. I'm one of the team leaders with Housing First, so I'm part of the Greater Manchester Housing First Partnership for Zone B, which is an area that covers Bolton, Bury and Rochdale. And my team is a delivery team based at the Bomb Board in Rochdale. So I work closely with Bury. We have people on the programme in Bury. And one of the things that I wanted to make sure is that people that are on the programme, on the Housing First programme, have a voice in shaping local services in those 3 areas. So I'm kind of working my way around, but I'm starting with Bury. And it is really important to me, just in terms of my personal input. I kind of feel as though I consider myself to be an honorary member of Elephant's Trail, which is like delightful. And to be honest with you, you know, we have so many meetings all the time, Zoom meetings, Teams meetings. Genuinely, the co-production meeting is my favourite meeting of the week. It's so refreshing to get new ideas and hear those voices, those genuine, authentic voices who have that lived experience. and the fact that we're really nudging and pushing for that system change. So all of that is really exciting to me. I'm part of the Bury panel in Bury, where we look at the allocations to the Housing First programme. And one of the things that we started talking about there a number of months ago. So Selva, when you were saying it's been about 6 months, it's not been that long, you know, we started in November. Yeah. And actually what we've managed to achieve since November, working together, is we've been a really important part of co-producing the homelessness strategy in Bury, including shaping some of the strategic aims of the, you know, so it doesn't feel as though it's just an add-on, you know, let's get co-production in that tick box thing that you were talking about, Selva. You know, there's genuine involvement, and our voices are being listened to, which is thrilling for me. So yeah, I mean, I've been involved in things like developing the questions for the, so we moved on from the homelessness strategy, and then we started working on what Judith and Selva and Juliet are working on at the moment, speaking to people at Manor House about their experiences of mental health services. So I've helped to develop some of those questions. I'm really interested to find out what people said to those questions that we developed, and it also the real impact of the work that we're doing. So it's really exciting for me being a provider in the area, but also being involved in the co-production group as well. So thank you for letting me be involved. Over to you, Ahmed.
Thanks, Claire. I think Selva, Judith, you know, Juliet, yourself, Claire as well, you know, you've articulated it a lot better than I'm going to articulate it now, you know, in terms of the co-production approach in Bury. I think what something from a local authority perspective, definitely, you know, the landscape's changed. Homelessness landscape has changed. But one of the things which, you know, there's been a lot of positive, but one of the main things, I think our partnership working has got a lot more slicker. It's become a lot more tighter. And maybe David can talk about this later on as well from the Manor House. And it was about taking this to the next level. And I think with co-production, with the views and the experience, you know, of colleagues on that group, it's brought a new energy. I really feel that. I really feel the energy and the knowledge is pinpoint. Yeah, it's not loose. It's not, you know, it's not just a nice, you know, nice ideas. This is actual 100% purity, if I can use that word. And definitely, you know, around the work that we've done around mental health, just for colleagues, we are looking very, very closely at how we're going to change pathways towards mental health and homelessness. But with the homeless strategy, all the views that colleagues made in the co-production group have been used. Yeah, and they are very much part of the strategy. It's going through sign-off at the moment internally within the local authority. But I think from my perspective, it's about how can we take this to the next level. So what are some of the characteristics of our homeless cohort, where there's challenges with sustaining tenancies, substance misuse, complex need, issues around where tenants need more support than your standard floating support can offer, maybe getting more social care type of involvement into place. These are things which we would like to, which definitely local authority would like to explore, but the drive, the knowledge, the skill set has to come from people with lived experience. Yeah, and it has to come from a grassroots level. I totally agree what Judith said. I made a note of it as well. You know, this idea of a tick box, it needs to go. Definitely when I'm on the co-production group, I don't know what all other colleagues think. I don't look at it like, you know, Ahmed's from Bury Council, David's from Manor House, Claire's from the board, you know, these guys are, you know, got to live there. I don't feel like that at all. It feels like one unit that we try, our outcome, where we're trying to go to the same place. It's about how do we get to that one place. And I feel like from a definitely a council level, this is the place that I want to be in. Yeah, not, you know, I don't know if I come across like a council guy, but you know, with the co-production group, I feel like I am part of that group, and I'm very willing to, you know, colleagues, I think, share their views quite honestly in a very transparent way. And I hope that reflects itself from the local authority as well, that we want to be honest as well, because we want to go to the same place. So co-production has definitely got a you know, a big life in Bury, and we want to keep that. We want to keep that momentum. Sorry, Matt, I've gone on a bit.
No, it's good, and it's really refreshing for me to hear that it's, you know, kind of the impact that it's had on you. As I said, because of time, I'm gonna be fairly quick on some of the highlights of the from feedback that have used Housing First. So I think that the key things that seem to make a huge difference, and this is said in the evaluation as well, is the quality and the type of the accommodation itself, the level of support that's available and is offered, the skills, qualities and temperament of the staff working on the projects, and the ability and willingness of staff to, particularly the security staff, to apply rules like really fairly and consistently in a way which promotes dignity and respect, and some level of individual consideration. I know it's really difficult in shared accommodation to offer that to the full, you know, the full extent to which people would like to, and have fully acknowledged, like, as I wouldn't want to like work in night shelter type accommodation. I fully kind of recognize all the stresses and strains that come for that, but some of the things that people have been through in there, they really shouldn't have, you know, kind of shouldn't have had to endure. And it kind of, some of the feedback is that perhaps in the early stages, you know, there was a rush to house everyone before putting the appropriate measures in to make sure that all the right staff with all the right safeguarding issues were there to operate that, like, you know, in that pressure cooker type, you know, environment. And it makes it very difficult. I'd sent an email to Molly before, like, you know, kind of when you said giving feedback on ABEN, it's really difficult because it's not one thing. Again, it's like, so the people we spoke to, it's varied from someone living in a dispersed property who's give like really, really positive feedback about the amount of support they've had, you know, increased hope and motivation, feel it, you know, finding out about support and resources they don't know about, believes the life could be changed for the better, offered things for basic, you know, care, you know, help with food, clothing, bus tickets, and feeling like hugely, like, you know, that was a hugely beneficial experience, to the complete opposite of that, you know, decreased hope and motivation, you know, not, you know, kind of, you know, feeling like one of the forgotten people. And there's this theme that comes up about, I was one of the lucky ones, and that just doesn't feel right to me. You know, the people that got on Housing First, I was one of the lucky ones, doesn't feel right. That like the level of support and care you get depends on luck, and that's something that I hope we can kind of talk about in the breakout rooms, how we move beyond that and get that to something that's more consistent, where there isn't lucky ones that get, you know, get the right level of support, and unlucky ones that don't, and are forgotten and spend a lot of time in, you know, nighttime only kind of dormitory type accommodation, or, as the point Neil makes, one of the unlucky ones that are in some of these completely unsupported, you know, B&Bs outside of ABEN.
Matt, I think you're still on mute.
Yeah, so that's it for the feedback for now. We'll go into the breakout rooms.
Okay, so yeah, let me just put my video on. Hey everyone. So I'm Samra Saeed from Greater Manchester Homeless Action Network, Street Support Network. So I have already pre-assigned each one of you as you are coming into the room, which group you are in. So we have 3 groups. Let me go through them with you. Group 1 is facilitated by Matthew Kidd, and that is responding to feedback from people who have accessed ABEN alongside Neil, Demo, Lex, and Katie. Group 2 facilitated by Paddy and Mel, and it's going to look at the co-production and forming a learning partnership element of the work. Group 3 is facilitated by David Sutherland and is responding to feedback from ABEN providers. We are asking you to kindly take some notes, key points, and then it's going to be just for 20 minutes, and we'll resume in 20 minutes and we'll share your points with everybody else. If you're happy, is that clear? Give me a thumbs up. Or shake your hand. Okay, brilliant. All right, I'm going to open it now. So if yeah, just welcome back, everyone.
Hi.
I always know like those 60 seconds must be so nerve-wracking, but what I did while everyone was in the breakout rooms, I've created like a document that everyone is able to access. So basically, if you have key points to brief on, feel free to put them in here. If you attended a certain group, feel free to put your name in that, and then we'll share that with us to everyone that attended today afterwards. So yeah, so Matt, over to you. Matthew? Can't see him. He's still muted. David Sutherland. David?
Yes.
Yeah. Do you want to maybe start with your feedback with your group until Matt is back? So we'll start with group 3, if that's all right.
Yeah.
So I can't hear, it's dead echoey.
Can everyone mute themselves, or was it my end?
Yeah, it's your end. Sorry.
Oh, it's okay. I'll mute myself. Thank you.
Thanks. So we had a lively discussion on various aspects of partnership working and multi-agency, it's fair to say. Judith and Jules took notes. So Judith, would you like to do some feedback from us? And then if anybody from the group feels there's something key missed, please indicate.
So what are the barriers to multi-agency? The accommodation and the choice of accommodation. So just at the end, I was saying, you know, it's a lottery for these people of what type, whose agency they end up with and what accommodation that they get. So they could either have a great accommodation, or they could be in a room that's full of damp, mold, and you know, and then they just put there. They don't have a choice of where they're going and what, you know, what sort of place, what it looks like. Just saying on that, there's a guy that got housed, and 3 weeks after being housed, his rent went up 33% as well. So he didn't have a choice in that, and what they meant to do. So yeah, so they all said the money and the support. So making these houses a home, and they need the carry-on support, not being dumped in these places and left. They need support to be able to move forward in life, to be able to deal with the money, and get things, you know, together, so they feel like they're secure and ready to stand on their own 2 feet. There's too many different organisations out there, so that's what I was saying about this. It's a lottery of which organisation you get put with, the amount of care that you get. So if you're with Housing First, you get great care. If you're not, 2 girls that I was supporting in Manor House, one was with Housing First, one wasn't. One was getting great support with everything, going to meetings with them and everything. This other girl, she just was in the same support mechanism, but she'd been raped and was not getting any support whatsoever. but having to go to court on her own and deal with everything on her own. So, and they're just two people. It was a lottery of who got what. We were saying about do we rely too much on charities to pick things up? And the thing is, at the end of the day, the people that are accessing the services do tend to trust the charities more than the councils out there for support. Did you feel like the council have their own agenda most of the time, just fulfilling their own jobs, not looking at the ground roots problems that are going on? Funding needs to be made easier to reduce the barriers. So when the charities are supporting these people, that it's made easier that they can get the funding without having to jump through hoops to get what they need. Also, the housing that they are going into, or these agencies are putting them in, there needs to be accountability for that, of what they look like and the services that they're providing. Brooke from Rochdale, she was saying that, you know, the ABED there, they do, you know, work with the ABED there, and it seems like, you know, they are trying the best on that side of it. So yeah, to round it off, I would just say there was extreme frustrations of too many people, and the fact that it's a lottery for these people's lives.
Thanks, Judith. Yeah, to me, it was very much the valuing of everybody's contributions, and the communication is the key. Communication is the key to treat, you know, so that we treat people appropriately for what they need. So it's establishing strong partnerships came across as well, and the importance of having consistent partnerships across all areas of Greater Manchester, because it was apparent that different boroughs were at different stages in their journeys. So it could be, how do we learn from each other? Anybody else with anything else from Group 3?
Could I just say that, so yeah, that was a good point that you just raised then. I've heard, because I've been at some meetings for the elephants in Rochdale, and a lot of the stuff what I hear coming out of Rochdale, and this isn't just related to, this is nothing to do with our co-production team, by the way, guys, but the stuff that you hear coming out of Rochdale just seems so far ahead and so so much more collaborative than what's going on in Bury and other boroughs. And I think, you know, we've been brought up by a system that's encouraged competition. You know, you want to get an A grade, you want to be the best at sport, you want to win the 100 metres race. And we've still all got that mindset because it's been drummed into us. But I think what the pandemic's shown me is that collaboration is the only way out of this mess. Collaboration with countries, collaboration with each other, and to be able to work together. So, for example, if Rochdale are doing something great, then let's Bury, you know, work together. Let's have team Zoom meetings across boroughs. They're only next door to us. Let's set the example for future generations that working together is the only way that we're going to get out of this mess, because it is. And the other thing that was brought up, which I brought up, was about money. You know, money's tight, and we appreciate that. And, you know, someone said, oh, the money has to be accountable for. But then, like, one of the frustrations we've had in the community hubs in Bury is that the food banks are struggling. They're not getting any support from the council. But yet they've put loads of pots of money, 70 grand for a load of big plant pots to go at the end of streets to stop traffic going through in areas that haven't got traffic problems. It's absolutely ridiculous. So we're in the process of setting up another subcommittee to try and hold the council accountable for that, but we shouldn't have to. If these, and I know it's government as well, if pots of money are available for putting plant pots on the end of streets, but there's people going homeless and starving, why can't that money be transferred across? It shouldn't be, oh, we've got to have that money and we've got to spend it on plant pots. It should be, what have we got left at the end of the year? What's our biggest need? It's homeless people. it's starving people. All that money goes into that pot. And I know that that's easier said than done, but if we can work towards something like that, it'd stop a lot of the community organisations getting frustrated and council people getting the flack. Oh, that made sense, because I feel like I'm having a bit of a rant.
Yeah, thanks, Jules. Matt, back to you, and I don't know whether it's group 1 or 2 is next.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Well, we'll go, but I think that I was going to invite Neil or Amanda to come in, possibly with some of the points that they were making, because we got on this thing of, like, you know, kind of like the false economy, basically. Why kind of options like Housing First, because there's a long-term commitment to people there. Like, they seem expensive at first, and they seem too expensive, but actually, like, a lot of the options that we do use, like, end up being more, you know, expensive in the long term, because people end up there, you know, kind of in stays that are supposed to be temporary. You know, including these places that are, you know, kind of badged as supported accommodation kind of projects, because you get this a lot, don't you, where people say, I couldn't afford the rent if I worked, you know, like which seems ridiculous. Situation where people, like, you know, are on you know, we've got that additional element of housing benefit that's being paid, which makes the overall stay really, you know, really expensive. So there was some stuff in there around commissioning and scrutiny and accountability and raising up standards, and that we actually need to work together on all of those things. So it's not just a bed for every night that we're raising standards in, because then you're risking that, like, lucky unlucky lottery that we've been talking about. We've been talking about a lot. That actually we kind of need to do that across the board. So the way that all supported housing's commissioned, the way that standards are driven up in all accommodation, it's and the way scrutiny is applied at a local level in making all of those decisions. So people, you know, aren't doing what seems like it's easiest in the short term, and are doing what, you know, kind of what's right. I don't know whether, like, on that stuff about driving up standards, I don't know whether, Amanda, you wanted to come in on that, about what you said that the Boo Centres have been doing around, you know, ensuring that.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just the Booth Centre, really, it's across Manchester. We as part of the Manchester Homeless Partnership, we've got an emergency accommodation action group, and a couple of years ago we set standards for emergency accommodation, and then the local authority agreed to commission to those standards, and that ensures some consistency across the projects. And just taking it forward this year, they've agreed to have a review of all the ABEN accommodation, and for that to be led by people who've lived in that accommodation, and that includes getting the feedback from people currently in the accommodation, but also people who've left in a planned or an unplanned way. So we're getting that feedback, and just some work we're getting the local authority to do around working with us to review the use of B&B accommodation, because at the moment it is a lottery, and often it's the people with the highest support needs who are found to have a full duty from the local authority, who in Manchester anyway get put into B&B accommodation, which is much poorer quality than the ABEN accommodation. So you've got people with the highest needs getting the least amount of support, which as a whole system just doesn't make any sense and costs a lot of money, but also just costs a lot in terms of the experience of people living in that accommodation. And in our group, Neil shared really vividly that experience of having to live in that accommodation. So thanks for that, Neil.
Do you want to say anything, Neil, quickly about your experiences?
Yeah, I mean, it's like what I've just been saying, is that I can't understand how they say that it's too expensive to put someone, you know, through housing first and have that wraparound support, when I've been through these hostel type places, and it's £400+ per week per person, and there's no support there. You know, you don't get treated like you know, it's obvious it's just about the money. The standards are just non-existent. You know, if you try and, you know, say anything about the place, it's you either get kicked out or you get shut down. It's like you either put up or shut up, you know, or you're out of the place. And I just can't understand how they're saying that is cheaper than treating you know, giving someone the wraparound support and getting somewhere decent to stay. And there should be a minimum, like a maximum amount of time that you stay in these places. I know people in these places 15, 20 years. So just think of that £400 over that amount of time, and they're saying that that's cheaper, you know, and like I said, it's down to how places are commissioned. You know, it's just a tick box. You know, they just have to do the minimum just to get this amount of funding. As long as they've done that, then you know, they get the funding. That is so wrong, because not one of these places is checked. Not one of these places is looked upon. Not one of these places is asked how the person now when they've been through the system. You know, it's widely known that these places are out there. That are, you know, rats are even moving out. I'll just explain it that way. The rats are even packing up and moving out. That's how disgusting they are. You know, and it's widely known that these places are just out there using vulnerable people just for their own gains and money. The staff are not trained. They don't know how to handle you. You know, they put everyone in the same situation, expect you to, you know, if you're in recovery, to recover. How they, you know, expect you, you know, your mental health to be better because you're not on the streets, but they put you in a worse situation with, you know, worse people that treat you like a piece of dirt, and it makes everything 10 times worse. You know, I just can't understand how they're still letting it go on, and not changing anything at all. My experience of these places is just, you know, like I said, I felt better staying on the street than I did in them places.
Yeah, we definitely. I think there's definitely a number of people that feel the same way, and it feels like that we need to carry on joining forces even more so than we have done already, and get these standards raised. So, is Paddy and Mel's group want to give a bit of feedback from their group on co-production?
Yeah, I'd love to, Matt. You know,
yeah.
I'll just. You all right,
Paddy,
Mel?
do you want me to go first? Quick example. So obviously,
yeah,
Paddy. So Paddy obviously, Paddy obviously asked in our group. Obviously, you know, would people have felt pressured about using co-production, and you know, but they didn't want to say. So, but everyone, you know, seems to kind of be on board and all that, and that's obviously drove the feeling for me to, as lived experience, the example of how important this co-production is. So obviously, when I first come out of prison, I was homeless, and I dealt with staff at a homeless where I had to basically sign myself onto. They were basically told me that I could not be classed as vulnerable, because even though I'd done a very long sentence, I had to basically be a lifer. Now, this to me, I was quite shocked, because obviously anybody who's a lifer would not be coming back to the hometown. Then I actually had a member of staff turn around to me and say, well, to make yourself vulnerable, maybe you need to go back into prison. Then we can class you as vulnerable, because you'll be classed as going through the doors. I mean, this isn't a criticism on, you know, whoever it was I was dealing with, but what it was is the importance of their staff knowing the ins and outs of how things work. And I feel that the only way they would get that is dealing with people with lived experience, you know, because that could be quite damaging, what I was told to me. So, yeah, really important. Paddy, do you want to crack on?
Oh yeah, just echo that, Mel. You know, thanks for that contribution. Obviously, like, things like that are really impactful. These are the messages that need to be getting carried out there to the people that can make a difference and stuff like that. So I think it's really important, you know, that these things are aired out in places like this. I just want to say, yeah, I was really blessed to be a part of that co-production meeting, that breakout room, had just an incredible discussion. I have to kind of confess my own shortcomings, because like a lot of people are really, really good at multitasking, but it's one thing that's not been gifted to me. I have to be honest. You know, I'm not always the best at taking notes, listening, and trying to facilitate at the same time. So if I overlook any of the tremendous points that was aired out in there, I asked that anyone that was a part of that room, please feel free to jump in with them contributions again, because it was so rich for the stuff that you were saying that, like, I don't want any of it to be missed. I want it to be brought forward. But as Mel was saying, so like, I thought it was important to lay a foundation when we started of just declaring that, you know, with this stuff, we've got to be really open. We just got to be really honest. Otherwise it doesn't work, because if people are not speaking in an open and honest way, then we're not getting the right kind of information that we need to make this kind of work, and even co-production as a kind of principle move forward and evolve into something that's more productive, you know. So it was critical to say that. So on the back of that, I did ask a bit of a controversial question, which was, has anyone in an organisation, service, or as an employee ever felt a little bit of pressure sometimes to be supportive of co-production, which might make it a little bit difficult to air any kind of reservations they might have about it, or any kind of concerns or any difficulties they might be facing? But off the back of that, what come out was a really positive conversation, and it was mainly around, you know, it was around culture, a lot of it, and that, like, if you have an established culture, that's a place where people feel honest and they feel open and they feel like they can discuss, you know, any concerns that they have. And that really comes about through, like, the time that you're willing to invest in it with. There's an awareness that to do things in a co-productive way, sometimes it takes an investment of time, effort, you know, and resources and things, but you're going to get in ultimately what you're putting out of it. You know, and a lot of that is around building relationships and building that atmosphere where people feel comfortable, and that obviously then can go on and become ingrained in, like, a kind of culture, you know, where nobody's scared of challenging, you know, certain kind of norms, certain kind of values that may have been established for a long time, but people are more open about, you know, coming out and speaking openly, you know, what is their actual kind of truth at that time. So yeah, so then, like, we discussed that co-production, it's one of the best ways to actually change a culture. Do you know, a lot of the time, like, we can want to change certain aspects of the working environment where we are, or especially people in management positions, and they can use ways that might not necessarily be as effective as they want. So, for example, if you sit down for a training session, you know, to go through, to cover a topic which is quite substantial, and you're expecting it to change the culture and the very behaviours that are embedded in your kind of in your workplace environment, it might not necessarily be that effective. But if you can integrate co-production to a place where it's kind of the norm of what you're doing, then that is something that can really, really help to reshape the kind of values that a company, an organisation, a service might actually have. So we started discussing around that. You know, and talking about, like, you know, there's a lot of places where co-production, it kind of runs through everything, and that's when co-production seems to work really, really well. We had a metaphor from our Claire, our wonderful Claire, who was talking about co-production being like a car, you know, where everyone comes into the car together, you all jump in the car, but you're all on a journey, you're all going to the same destination, you know, which I thought was really, really, really helpful. And we talked about, like, we had an interesting discussion towards the end as well about, like, you know, within the Salford event, and I hope you don't mind me kind of discussing the name there, but it was talking about how co-production, or, like, you know, service user involvement and things like that, has become something that's like a normal process. It's like integral, but they don't know whether, like, it's something that they should actually name as co-production and then kind of distinguish it and separate it, because in doing that, does that kind of remove it, you know, from what they're doing as something separate, or is it more kind of useful to keep it as something that just runs throughout the company? And then we discussed about whether there's a risk of that, you know, trailing off, you know, if someone in management came and didn't, wasn't aware of that and such things. Sorry, Matt, I'm going over your time.
It's all fascinating stuff. I think it's it's just mindful we've got 5 minutes left, and I think Shuff was just going to say something about the independent evaluation before we finished at 1:30 as well. But I really love to explore that in more detail, like at one of our further events. And I think we've got a few more weeks of doing this work, so maybe kind of get in touch with Jade, one of us get in touch with Jade and get some learning around that. I take it is Jade that's from Salford, the Salford ABEN.
Yeah, it is Matt, yeah.
It is Matt, yeah.
Okay, yeah, Shuff, do you want to, sorry, you've not got much time to talk about the evaluation, but I don't know if you wanted to say anything about it.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. I'll keep it brief anyway. It's just to advise everybody that I'm sure everyone is aware that we had a independent evaluation taking place through phase 3. So that is the summary and the key findings are going to be going to the Greater Manchester Homelessness Programme Board, which I believe Neil and Matt, you guys are at as well. So there's a lot of learning that's come out of that. There's been some frank recording of experiences within each of the ABEN settings across all of Greater Manchester. So it's some really interesting stuff, but it's actually, where do we take it next? So once the summary goes to Programme Board, we will be looking at how we're going to impact it, some of the changes going on through the next phase for ABEN that will start on the 1st of April, and how we will build that into the assurance and learning framework that we have and the ongoing learning. It's not just having that learning from that evaluation and doing nothing for it, or we'll do it into the next phase. It's that continuous element that we will be working with our local authorities, the key partnerships, through some of the local learning conversations that we are really, really keen to get to make sure that they continue, and where they've not been as strong in localities, to strengthen some of that. So that will actually be happening as well. And it's just to give you a bit of an oversight. Once it's gone to the Programme Board, we've signed it off, then we will be able to share that a lot more widely. And again, every single person that's here needs to be part of how we implement that. It's not just for an ABEN provider to do. Back on the session that we were in about bringing services together, I think we need to congratulate ourselves and praise ourselves that we have got to such a standard now, but we've got to push those boundaries and get better. Where our relationships may be not as strong, how do we bring that together? So through this implementation of what comes out of the evaluation, we should be able to strengthen that. And I think that element around the co-production, that is so key, because that is what's actually built that evaluation, and the learning from that will be really important. So just on that. Thanks, Matt.
Fantastic. Yeah. Samra, did you want to say anything from the HAN's perspective about what comes next, just before we close?
Yeah, so we will, so there's 2 things we'll be sharing with you guys. In addition to the notes from here, it's the summary of the feedback from the providers, as well as the commission report that Matthew Kidd is working on. So as soon as that's finalized, I think the conversation is going to be wrapped up from now until the beginning of April. Once that draft is ready to be shared, we keep an eye on your GMHAN mailer. If you're not, that's where we share information as well. It will be on our GMHAN website. But I will be sharing the notes or the recording as well with everybody here. And I've shared the document in the chat. This is actually just the notes from the feedback from the groups. So any feedback you have, any points, any keynotes that you've taken, it is a live document. So please feel free to share it there. And I can't really emphasize enough that we know how hardworking everyone is here, and how it is difficult to meet in such particularly early in the morning when everybody has got obviously a job to do, an important job to do. So we really appreciate your time and your input and your support and your insight as well. That's been really meaningful today for us. So if there's any feedback for the session in general, feel free to email me or Matt. I'm just going to put my email here. Any feedback is useful, so please, thank you so much. Over to you, Matt.
Yeah, it's just thanks everyone for that, and I will there's both an interim report that we're gonna send round in terms of the work that's been done to date, but as I said, it's scheduled to finish right at the end of the financial year, this this work. So there's ongoing conversations in Bury that need to kind of do a more detailed report about. We've got some initial feedback that could built into there, and finally, I say, like, whether it's me or someone else involved in the elephants, I really would like to follow up on that with you know, kind of with Jade and anyone else about how they're, you know, kind of, regardless of whether you want to call it involvement or participation or whatever, how they're involving, you know, that feedback from people using the service in developing it. And I think it would be great to feature some of that in, you know, kind of in that report. So there's, you know, there's learning there that other providers can you know, kind of can hopefully take on board and kind of make sure they involve people more in the development of ABEN. So yeah, that's dead on past. I'm very impressed with us, how we've managed to, yeah, perfect timing.
And can we have a special thanks to Matthew, because he's worked so hard on this for the past few weeks. So a special thanks to everyone, to all the facilitators, to Shuf and Esme, who's also been quite instrumental in the background. So thank you so much to all of you. Have a wonderful day. And if the sun is shining where you are, go and enjoy it.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.